This is another episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast. Man, I have another fun interview for you this week. A good friend of mine, he used to play the club quite a bit back in the day, all my clubs, but he's done lots of television, done a lot of corporate work. We're going to talk about that. He's doing some specialty shows, but right now he's playing at the MGM in Las Vegas. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Cash Levy.
Wow. Thank you.
They're so excited. Sit down.
I mean, I didn't know you had such a big studio audience for every show. That's amazing.
Yeah, when you offer free tickets. So you're playing the club MGM Las Vegas right now. Tell us a little bit about the show you're doing.
Yeah, I'm at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club. It's a great club. It's been here for many, many years, and I'm having a good time. Las Vegas is an interesting place to live for a week. You know, it's a full week. It's a Monday through Sunday, so it's a full week here. I spend a lot of time at the pool, and most people don't seem to be using the pool, Scott, for swimming. They generally just stand inside of it and drink. It's sort of it's like a. So yesterday I actually swam in the pool, and people were looking at me like I was crazy. They were like, "What is he doing? Where's he holding his beer?" You know,
it's like a wet AA meeting, right?
It is, and it's like it's crazy because and then the pool. I think that the alcohol content, because people spill their drinks, I think in the pool. I think the alcohol content of the pool increases as the day goes on. So it was like 5:30. I think I was just swimming in pure grain alcohol at that point.
Well, it gives the image of Las Vegas something different. Well, I'm sure you'll have a great show there at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club. Yeah. You know what's interesting about you, Cash? Not only you've been a successful stand-up comic for decades, but you're really known for your audience work and being quick-witted on stage. I know you do corporates, you do specialty shows, you do a lot of comedy clubs still like you are this week. Does the audience work really carry your set? Because I know you have set material you've written as well.
Yeah, of course. What I do is kind of weave in and out, and I kind of get a feel for what's working better that night, and I like to sort of riff into my material so that it feels more present and in the moment. So I'll ask a question of a crowd member, and then I'll sort of know I have a joke on the other side that is of that topic. So I always have that if I need it. Sometimes I never get to the joke. It's interesting, the joke I plan to tell, if I get sidetracked by my, improvisation. But that's just kind of how I've been doing it over the years. What happened was, Scott, I would go really far when I was just starting comedy. Then I would go to regions where the material wouldn't work as well, and I would be like, well, I got to do something here, and I'd start improvising more, and then it would free up the material, and the material would work better also. So it's kind of a combo.
And you could be a little more outlandish when it's based on a conversation with someone in the audience, because now you're taking it to the funny by exaggerating something, and that in itself becomes the material. But I think it shows your professional talents that you can weave in and out of that, and that you always have something in the back of your mind. It kind of reminds me, and I'm not comparing you, but Robin Williams had that machine gun style where some topic would come up, and boom, he could go off and do several minutes that would lead to some other topic. And all that stuff was in his brain, and he was just able to pull it forward, kind of like a Rolodex. Oh, they're talking about airplanes. Okay, I've got this material here. That really speaks highly to your talents, Cash. Now, I know you've done a lot of television. You've been on all the shows. One of the ones I wanted to ask you about was, what was it like on the Craig Ferguson show? Because I've read his book. He seems like a funny guy himself. Was that a welcoming environment for a comic?
Yeah, that was really a good experience. I did that show twice, I think. And I did it twice. It was very welcoming. The crowd is really good. And it was a very comfortable situation. I really enjoyed both of those. and he's a really super nice guy too. You know, late night sets are interesting because you have to pare everything down, and it feels a little more like a skating routine. You know, like you're doing like 4.5 minutes of the really abbreviated versions of these jokes that you've worked so hard over. You might take a chunk of 15 minutes and cut it down to the tightest, the shortest, most concise 4.5 minutes, and it feels a little strange, you know?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because a lot of headliners for the listening audience, you know, you're expected to do 45 minutes to an hour, and then you're absolutely correct when you get on a talk show or some sort of television format. Not only does it have to be short and concise and exactly to the time limit, it's got to be perfectly clean, and you have to somehow get the setup and the punchline in this abbreviated presentation. That would be really challenging.
It is challenging, Scott. It's really interesting. There's different aspects to it that are challenging. Number one, you're not used to, again, shortening everything that much, and you're shortening to probably the biggest parts where you get laughs, which seems like a great thing, right? But that's not always your favorite part of those bits. I mean, you know, being a comedian, that like, your favorite parts might be some esoteric tag, meaning tag for the people who don't know is like the thing you do after the joke, or some weird part of the setup. Like, it's not always the thing that you like best that you're doing on the television show. So that makes it kind of challenging, because you should probably pick out the parts that get the biggest laugh out of the joke, but it's not always your favorite. The second thing that's really challenging is sometimes the networks want to change a word or two. Like, there was this one joke, and it makes it really awkward because you haven't ever told the joke that well until that night. So, like, at the last minute, they'll say, I remember one where they said, I had this joke about, like, pulling some things out of my pouch or something, if people were marsupials, something like that. And and I would pull out Hot Pot, or I would pull out Skittles at one point, and they said, well, you can't say Skittles because we have, they advertise with us, And so I had to use another product, but it had to be generic, like a chicken leg or a turkey, or whatever. And the joke, for like 2 weeks, I tried to pull different things out of the pouch for the joke, and none of them worked. And eventually I just pulled the joke. So I was like, it doesn't work without the product itself,
Oh, that's so funny.
So like you're totally like adjusting as you go along, or they say like, or right before you go on, they'll be like, can you change this one phrase? And you're like, okay. I mean, you don't really have the power to say no. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's always last minute. So it's not like you can prepare that much. The fact that they gave you a little bit of a heads up and you got a chance to try different things. I think humans
That's rare.
I think humans with a marsupial pouch is a very funny setup, and you could do lots with that. But that is interesting. And going on TV always is, not only you have to be in the moment, you have to connect with the audience, you want to get your material out, and you're engaging with the host. So there's really a lot of different aspects to doing a TV set that I'm sure makes a professional like you maybe sweat a little more, or did you come to it naturally?
No. I think it's one of the most, Scott, I think it's one of the most stressful things in the industry because, like I said, you're not doing it naturally like you would normally do, and there's no do-overs. So you really feel like,
You mean you can't yell out, cut, let me try that again.
Right, you can. And the other thing, Scott, is you're used to doing 45 minutes to an hour, and anything that goes wrong on a comedy show, you can fix it as you go along, like in terms of joking. In fact, you could even just joke. If you screw up a joke, you can joke about how you messed it up. I mean, like it's all part of the moment that you're in with the crowd, and it's this communal thing. But on a TV set, it's just, like I said, that's why it feels like a skating routine, because you feel like you want it to be word for word perfect. And because there's really no doing it a second time. And you also know that at the time, like now there's more internet. Obviously, there's a lot more internet stuff, and TV used to be bigger. It used to be, they used to.
Oh yeah, I mean, if
Carson was like made for life, right?
Right, you did Carson with Johnny, and that could make or break your career. And then being on Ferguson, it had been diluted, but even then, there was still a late night audience. I don't think it exists anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same, but at the time it was nerve-wracking because you're like, okay, this is the one time my relatives might see me perform stand-up comedy. You know what I mean? And my entire career will be based on what happens in the next 4.5 minutes in terms of them thinking if I was a successful comedian or not. Like the pressure of it is like, you know, your aunts and uncles that live on the East Coast, they're not going to come see you, you know, unless you're nearby. And like, so some people have never seen you before, and like, your parents are going to get a letter from someone saying, "Hey, you must be proud of them," or "Hey, what the hell happened?"
What's with your mutant child? I saw him on TV.
Exactly. What's going on with this pouched mammal joke? What's going on with that? I mean, no, it's really like it is stressful, the TV stuff. I've always said, I think that most people say, "Do you get nervous before shows?" And I don't get nervous at all for any regular show. But the only thing that makes me nervous is performing for friends, family, relatives, because part of the whole idea of this is that you think when you're on stage, you're like, I'm not going to ever see these people again. And that gives you the freedom to not have to be perfect, and you don't have to like be word for word perfect. But when you have family in the crowd, you know that like whatever you're doing that night is going to define their opinion of you the rest of their life.
Wait a minute. Are you saying family and friends might be a little more judgy?
I don't know what kind of family you have, but yeah, I mean, it's like, plus, being in this industry, the amount of like, I think a lot of people think in this industry that if you're not a household name, you failed. And I don't see it that way at all. I never have.
Oh, that is so false. There's so many really good comics
people, right?
that have had a lifelong career and nobody would know their name, and yet they've had, huge success.
We both know guys that are funnier than people that are household names. And both of us, you in particular, having, had a comedy club all those years and doing this podcast, and they're just as good, every bit as good as someone that's a household name. And there's a lot of chance involved when you get to that final 2% of people knowing you. But your friends and relatives sometimes don't know that. Like, is he still trying comedy? It's like, you know what?
It's been 40 years. I've got a nice house. I got a nice car. Yeah, I guess he's still trying.
I always thought when you get to the point where you could like, support your family and make people laugh and people like what you do, that's considered success because it's a hard industry, like any other artist. But some of the public perception isn't like that. They really just think that like unless people are household names, they're not. They didn't make it.
Well,
so you feel a little bit more pressure in terms of impressing those people. Yeah. I find I don't care as quite as much as some people that I.
But you may not realize it, but you say you don't care, but I think what it is that with experience and professionalism, you've got the confidence to know that you're going to do well with an audience, 10 times out of 10 these days. And like you said, even if you have a bad bit or even a slow drunk audience, you as a pro know how to make that work.
Yeah.
And that gives you a comfort level.
Yeah, but Scott, this is what's weird. And this is why I've always been confused about comedians being so critical of each other, because I've always felt like we're the ones that made it to this thing where we got to do this for a living. Like, why are we being so mean to each other? I don't know why comedians are so hard on each other. It's really interesting. Like comedians, I don't know if you've ever talked about on the show, but they can be real mean about other comics in the green room. And it's like, I don't know, maybe you should be mean to other professions,
Well, I agree and disagree. I think there's always a bit of competition when people are both vying for, the middle wants to be a headliner or the opener wants to be a middle. There's going to be a sense of competition, but I will disagree that I think there is a little bit more of a quote unquote community with comedy as opposed to magicians who have a community, but they all do the same trick. So,
interesting.
They have to find their twist on the rings or the scarf trick or something. And so that competition and that friction, I think, is a little bit stronger. Going back to the Craig Ferguson TV spot, a lot of the host will have cheat notes to ask about things. I got the sense that Craig was a little bit more freewheeling, or did you set him up on things to ask about?
And I don't remember how that went. I don't know if I sat at the couch with him or not.
Oh, I would have assumed you would. You were such a big star.
No, I don't know. I don't think I did.
Okay. Well, it was just a question that about, doing TV shots, that when you're doing the late night shows, if you get the couch, you have to, some people think you have to be prepared with more material, but I think that the industry is a little sharper than that, and they've prepared the host to ask the right things that leads to more material. You see what I'm saying?
That's true. I mean, I think more people used to have like a bit ready when they sit on the couch, like than they do now. They're more freeform now. I know, like when you look at Steve Martin's, like when he would go to the couch, he would be ready with some like another bit.
Right.
It was really interesting. He'd have a plan. Yeah.
Right. The entertainer themselves have something in mind. Well, I also wanted to bring up that you have been a very successful corporate act. You've done shows for Coca-Cola, Home Depot, IKEA. That must have been hard to put together. Bose Audio.
Yeah.
When you're doing the corporate gigs, I think that I'm just assuming, so I want you to verify that because you're so good interacting with an audience and improvising, that what you do in corporate gigs allows you to bring the company and the staff into the show, into the material. But maybe explain to the audience the difference for you doing, let's say, working the MGM in Vegas versus a gig for IKEA or Coca-Cola.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Scott. I think for corporates, and I've often told my wife this, like if the show goes well, I'll say I didn't have to do any material. And that means because every minute you're talking about anything from your act, you're losing the corporate crowd because they came to hear about themselves. And the minute you go into your relationship material or what it was like to be at the MGM pool or whatever else, they're losing interest. So I want it to be the way I do the corporates is I write maybe 5 minutes up front, maybe even 10 about the company itself. I'll ask them questions and find out more about the company and who their rival company is, stuff like that. What it's like at their office. Maybe they've got a broken coffee machine for the last 10 years or just something sort of inside baseball type stuff. And then I hit the ground running that way. And then I'll riff with a lot of the people in the company. And the better the show goes, the more I didn't even have to do any material from my act because they really are tickled when it's about their environment. They want it to be about them. And that kind of fits in well with my style because I like to riff anyway. And I don't mind riffing about the HR department and how they messed up that one thing a couple of years ago or whatever else, So, you can ask people who their, favorite employee at the office is and kind of riff back and forth about stuff like that. And so really, for me, it fits in perfectly with my style. I also don't really have any dirty material, so I don't really have to change anything when I do go into my jokes. Well, so that helps too.
I think it's so smart that you're pointing out for the podcast listening audience that it is so important to do material that engages with your audience. So if you're playing the MGM, that's a different audience than a corporate. But also it shows your professionalism and your preparedness in that you're doing a little research. So you're not going out cold in front of the CEO of Home Depot. You have some ideas of what you're going to talk about. Hey, I know you just had a big sale on ladders. Did that step up things for you? Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, what's fun about it is I learn a lot about, I really do enjoy there's a lot of comedians that just take the paycheck and they don't really enjoy corporates, but I actually like them because I've learned a lot about these different industries and there's all kinds of interesting aspects of these industries I never would have known. Crazy stuff. And it's fun to know about those different worlds. And then sometimes they'll bring me back and, do their award show and, I'll meet new companies, one thing will lead to another, but I actually really enjoy it. And I think it is fun to write a joke and know that that's the only night you're going to get to tell it.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That must put an interesting twist on the work for writing comedy material, is that, 30, 40 years you've been in show business as a stand-up comic. The whole idea is to take some lump of coal and form it into a gem of a joke, and that can sometimes take months or years to really get every word and inflection right. And then you do a corporate, and you're going by the seat of your pants and improving and hitting and bringing out jokes that are, like you said, are only going to work that night. I could see where that would be challenging and fun.
It's really rewarding, because how many times, and I'm sure you've done this numerous times, where you write a bit and you want to protect the bit. You don't want to unveil it on a night where the crowd's not great, and you want to give it a nice nesting spot in the middle of your set where you feel confident. And then 2 or 3 nights in a row, you're like, I don't know if this is the right crowd for this bit. And you kind of bail. And, you evacuate that bit. With the corporates, every single thing I write, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I don't care if it's written down on a napkin on the airplane napkin. I'm going to do this bit because I can't ever try it again. And it's a funny idea. And I'm just going to try to workshop it in front of this corporation. And generally, they give you the benefit of the doubt at the corporate, because I think they're flattered you wrote something about them anyway. So it's the degree of expectation isn't as high about that particular, perfection of that bit. So it's kind of fun, And if it doesn't work, they know you just did it one night for them,
Right. It's really kind of a win-win situation. I wanted to point out that I thought it was really smart of you to mention how you nestle, I love the verbiage, nestle a new bit into the middle of a set, because we've often shared with our audience that when you're a comic and you want to use the set close, you want to start strong. So that's like your A material is your close, your B material is your open, and everything else in the middle's stuff you're working on. And your description of taking a new bit, nestling it into the middle of a set, that is so paints the right picture. Well, you've had so much success on corporate, and we were talking about the TV appearances, and I know currently you're working at Brad Garrett's club. Clubs all over the country. There's not as many now as there were back in the 80s and 90s, but the audiences, as I mentioned, you worked for me a lot back in the day. Are you finding the audiences are similar, different? Is it the same gig now than it was 20 years ago?
I think they are. I think they're pretty similar in terms of I don't think it's changed as much as some people describe it. I know there's a lot of talk about how people are more sensitive right now because of political correctness and stuff like that. But I think that's more of a regional thing. I've always thought that the entire thing is more regional. You had enough clubs where the entire feeling of a club is different, like even 20 to 30 minutes on one side of town versus another. Right. Well,
actually, almost audience to audience, night to night. I mean,
exactly.
Thursday night, it could be drunk cowboy night. Friday night, late show's always a hell show. And then you got Saturday, 8:00, where it's packed with somewhat sober, interested people. So it is true. What you're saying is that every audience and every night can be different. But regionally speaking, I think you're also making a good point, is that the people that are concerned, let's say a little more woke or liberal, are going to be found in California and New York, or the two coasts. And if you're doing gigs in Vegas and in Oklahoma and up in Chicago, you're going to get a better mix and less sensitive people. Is that correct, or am I judging?
Like I said, I do think it's still within those regions. It still has to do with the city you're in, because there are conservative parts of California and there's really liberal parts of Chicago. So I still think it's more, in terms of what, area code you're in within a region even, but you can feel it as you're doing it. It's not as, I think if you've got a guy that just does the same thing every show, that's got to be hard if you're just in the wrong place. You know what I mean? I
see what you're saying. If you took Emo Phillips and you put him in a highly conservative, strict atmosphere, they're not going to flow with his esoteric material.
Right. So like some guys, yeah, but I'm kind of flowing with what's happening anyway with the improv. So like for me, it doesn't really matter because I can sort of feel it as it goes along, and I'll be like, all right, I'm not going to do that joke that even mildly hints at religion, not in this area, or I'm not going to stay away from this one, or this is the perfect time to do this bit that I really like that's a little bit more on the edge, and you can kind of feel that along as you go along. When you asked about things that have changed, though, I'd say one thing that I think the clubs have improved on, a lot of them, is I think a lot of clubs are doing earlier shows so that the late show isn't quite as crazy.
Well, I can see that would be a smart move. I mean, my shows were always at 8 and 10, and we were always out the door by midnight, so we weren't doing the late stuff.
But yours weren't in wild areas, so I think that was there are some city clubs now that are going like 7 and 9, and it kind of makes sense because in those particular cities, previously maybe they would have done a 10:30 or an 11. And it was just something we would dread, like, let's be real. Like, it was
it's not worth it for the audience.
Crowd is so drunk. Yeah.
It's so funny because some club owners think that, okay, the comic is this week's meat and we're just going to throw them up on stage and we're going to, make some money selling drinks and we don't care about anything else. And that is so incorrect. I mean, it should always be about the audience, and that should always be about the entertainer having the best possible opportunity to do his craft. And then, you hope you make money, but it is so important because the audience isn't going to come back unless you do a good job. And the comic isn't going to have a good time and connect with the audience if he's not having a good time. Now, maybe it's different in Vegas where the audience is never coming back. But in a local club, which is what you mostly work in, it is so important that you have the audience comic interaction, give it the best possible platform you can for success, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I think there's a lot of comedy clubs that are aware of that, and there's a few that aren't, and sometimes those aren't the ones that survive,
Right.
If they're not cognizant of that. Totally. Yeah.
Well, I think it's been made clear, and we're going to share with the audience some of your improv audience material, but I think an important key that you explained, and I'm just going to reiterate it for my listening audience, is that as a longtime professional entertainer, you're able to do two things that make you the success you are, Cash. One is that you self-edit so that you are always able to put in the material that you think is going to work for that particular moment and that particular audience on that particular night. And because of your gift of improvisation and audience work, that you can, as you said earlier, weave your material in and around the audience that not only presents that material in the best possible platform, but also the audience is that much more engaged and willing to take that trip with you. They're going to go with you on the story or the joke or the premise because they already like you and feel like you're one of them. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. What I love most about this is the communal feeling that comes out of it sometimes, and the communal, like we were all in this together type thing. And there was a show like 2 or 3 weeks ago where I went home and I was like, I don't even know if, like, I was the conduit to this funniness that happened amongst all of us. Like I was just sort of I was a director of this crazy sort of confluence of these people in this room, and we had this communal togetherness, and it was really a special night. That doesn't happen all the time, and that's very unique to have it feel that out of body. But sometimes it feels like you're channeling the energy of the room.
Yeah, the audience is they become part of the entertainment.
Right, absolutely. And you see that with different improv shows, and that's what's special, I think, about improv. But because it's like we're all in this together, and we all sort of had the same. They're just nights where you're like we all have the same sensibilities. That's what's so fun about it when that happens. When it doesn't happen, you're you've got the material that works still. So that's the beauty of it.
It's a foundation or something you can fall back on.
Exactly, because some of the people, some improvisers just don't have any material, and then that's troublesome also, because sometimes that communal thing isn't happening. Well, then you've got some jokes that really work, and that's great too. So you've got kind of both angles there.
Well,
but,
Cash, you've mentioned so many important things, not only about the industry, but what has made you such a success. And I'm going to share a little bit of your audience improv with this listening audience to show your skills. But thanks so much for coming back on the podcast and talking about not only your great success on TV and in clubs around the country, but your corporate work. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in booking Cash for one of your corporate events, how best to reach you?
Yeah, go to cashlevy.com.
Wow, it's that difficult.
It's that easy, yeah. you can just fill out a form, and it goes to my agent, and we just take it from there. It's a simple process, and I love doing it. That's all you do, cashlevy.com. And Scott, I will say before we go, you really helped me in those embryonic years, and I appreciate the support you always gave me, and I love to come back and do the podcast again. I've enjoyed the podcast.
Oh, well, thanks so much for saying that. And it was such a joy, not only for me to work with you and have you on my club, but I got to tell you, you always, as we've been talking about, brought it for my audience. And to me, that's really what it made it all worthwhile. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see him in a local club, you want to use him for a corporate, check out cashlevy.com. That's cash, CASHLEVY.com, and get a chance to bring this really professional, talented improv / stand-up comic, the guy that can do it all, to your event. Cash, always great to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, sit back. We have a little bit of his material. And Cash, continued success out there.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, hey, let's listen to some of Cash Levy's material right now.
That's great, man. Why would you be a moose? Where are you from?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
North Carolina, where there's no moose. Okay, this is getting off to a rocky start. I knew this was going to be a little bit of a strange crowd. I could tell. We really could have done this in a hot tub, couldn't we? It's a cozy group. People are still kind of filing in. They're like, what's going on? I don't even know if you guys knew there was a show tonight. Some of you just kind of sat down. You were gambling. You were tired. We came out, started talking. You're like, oh, we don't want to be rude. I guess we'll stay for a while and tell them we'd like to be a moose. Raleigh, North Carolina. That's wonderful. What do you do out there? Sales. Okay. You don't want to break that down for me, do you? Not very specific. A lot of people kind of narrow it down. This guy just goes door to door. Hey, you want to buy something? They call me the Moose. I'm from North Carolina. That's great. What do you sell?
Coffee.
Coffee? Oh, I would think that kind of sells itself. Moose, I'm not sure you're necessary. Is anybody like, I'd like to get some coffee, but I don't know where the hell to find it. I better find somebody to help me. Maybe that moose guy.
You're an animal, man. What kind of animal would you be? A bobcat. Do they live out there in North Dakota?
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay, and you like them?
I work for a company called Bobcat.
You work for a company, so you want to be the animal mascot of the corporation you work for. This is one loyal employee. Like, Bob, what's up with you? You're on all fours. I want to be a bobcat. That's going to take this standardized group to the next level. Where do you work?
Air Force.
Air Force. Okay, yeah, that's going to be hard to make fun of. How long you two lovebirds been together?
7 years.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah, you guys married? No, yeah, don't want to rush into anything. Yeah, just keep your options open, camouflage. You're 40 now. What do you got around your neck? A shot glass? Okay, that's good. 7 years. Where did you two lovebirds meet? On his boat. Okay, I didn't expect to hear that in Nevada. I haven't seen a drop of water since I've been here. He just puts it out in the middle of the desert. He's like, no, it's not a mirage. Come on over.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.